Our passion is to become the trusted advisor for our clients and impact their success through education, process, and technology. For me, the most exciting part of what we do is being able to impact our clients' success. Hello, my name is Kayvan Yazdi. I'm the CEO and co-founder at TruAdvantage. We are an MSP and MSSP here in Cupertino, California, right in front of Apple campus, or as we call it, the Bay Area. One of the main marketing slogans that we use, which is actually embedded through our process, is solve, secure, optimize, and grow. When we can help out our clients on a daily basis to solve their problems and being able to, for example, with our medical clients, take care of the patient care, which is the most important thing for us, that brings a lot of satisfaction. Security is, of course, that peace of mind and data protection that we do for our clients. But the most important part for us is being able to optimize their operations on a regular basis. If you do something in 10 minutes and I can make this be done in 5 minutes, that's the most satisfying thing for us to do. That's how we can create a competitive advantage for our clients. For example, making our clients more scalable, from automating your onboarding process to minimizing or making your environment as lean as possible so it's easy to manage.
Thank you again for joining. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about, cybersecurity. It's what we're here to talk about, but the ever-evolving cybersecurity landscape in particular. We're going to dive into the landscape, how we're seeing trends evolve, how we're seeing different types of attacks and the forms of those attacks, and how certain types of attacks are becoming more prevalent than others because of the success rate that we were seeing depending on the attack type. And so we'll get into that. A little bit of housekeeping before. So the chat function is open. You can chat with both of us today. There's also a spot at the bottom bar or the top bar, depending on whether you're full screen or not, for a Q&A section. You can ask any question that you want throughout the webinar. We'll get to them at the end, but if there is one that's maybe relevant to what we're speaking about at the time, then we'll try to answer them throughout as well. One more thing is that we're going to have some polls throughout the webinar. So we really encourage you to participate. We're going to be doing a raffle for each poll, and you can win some Barracuda swag. I mean, as Kevin mentioned, we do have some really nice swag. So participate and you'll have a chance to win. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to our presenter today, Kevin Davey.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Kirsten. And yeah, just a quick introduction slide. Kevin Davey here, a senior systems engineer over at Barracuda. I've been with Barracuda a little over 7 years. So I mostly focus on email security, but we've got about 27, 29 different products that we offer over here. So I've been able to dabble into pretty much all of them, specializing in email, but I also speak a lot about XDR, about our managed security awareness training, our data inspector, which is a data loss prevention tool, and we got RMM, we got backup, we got firewalls. We'll cover everything that you got in your security world. So try to be an umbrella effect where we really affect any product in the cybersecurity space. Easy to use, easy to buy, easy to manage is the goal here. Enough about me. Today we're talking about the cybersecurity landscape, how things have changed, looking at the overall cybersecurity landscape and really how it's evolved over time. So there's really no need to go that far back into the past. There's plenty going on in 2001 to 2003 to talk about, but let's just do a quick recap. From 2000 to 2007, cyber attacks have gone from being intrusive and annoying to being disruptive. Hackers have really figured out how to create and launch ransomware in 2007. So that's really when things started to become dangerous. 2014 rolled around and they actually started becoming more disruptive with access to the Internet of Things, or IoT, as it's called. And cyber attacks have really become costly and sometimes business-ending events for a lot of organizations. So with big giant ransom bounties that they're asking for, or ruining someone's reputation, has really become problematic for organizations as they've started to evolve. 2022 rolls around, we see a growth of the Internet of Everything up until really 2022, end of 2022, which dramatically changed the use of everything that is being online these days. So I'm the first one to admit that the internet is a powerful business tool. It makes us more efficient. It allows us to communicate more effectively. It allows us to establish a larger footprint for our organizations. Companies can now go from global in an office to global, all over the world, right? So using the internet, really makes us connected worldwide. But the problem is that we as business people look at the internet as a critical business tool. Hackers see us as an opportunity to break into your business. And we're basically going to be getting into a lot more detail later on in the presentation about that. Fast forward to today, and AI technologies like ChatGPT, as I'm sure you have all heard about it, they're extremely compelling for organizations, but it also opens up a whole new world of cyber threats and cyber thugs to take advantage and further evolve their approach. And we can expect the impact of these evolutions to be colossal, and I'm not sure what's bigger than that. The other reason we see an increase in cybersecurity incidents is non-state actors. So less than 10 years ago, 90% of the attacks we saw were nation state on nation state. In other words, like Korea, Russia, Iran, all the usual suspects would attack the US, and the US would do the same in some kind. And now we're seeing non-state actors, people with like average computer skills, going into the dark web, purchasing very sophisticated hacking tools. And also, from a business perspective, we don't help ourselves because we've gone to work from a home environment. So there's no longer a parameter for a lot of companies, right? We can't protect people from a quality firewall. Instead, we have people working from home using their home devices. A golden opportunity for hackers to take advantage of that, basically. Unfortunately, most hacks can be devastating, and that's not, us saying that. It's really just kind of how things are. If you look at the Verizon breach report, they have a very eye-opening statistic there, and they quote that 60% of SMBs that are hacked go out of business in the next 12 months. So really, these hackers, they get in, they get what they want, and they absolutely just leave devastation in their wake. So crime has changed. We can all agree with this evolution, crime has been changing. And no longer is it profitable to try to physically break into a building and steal assets from a company. It's much easier to go ahead and steal that information digitally. Here we have a creepy looking hacker guy, or a burglar here breaking in. The reason is because of more valuable information than credit cards numbers and things like that people could actually access. Could be personal information, personal emails, account credentials, all those types of things are way more valuable than just going in and stealing some cash. All these things could be ransoms. They could be sold to other people and used for various purposes. So credit cards, obviously could be used in many ways, but personal identification, social security numbers, the number of ransomware attacks really just continues to grow year over year. We hear on the news every week, sometimes daily, that there is a new malware attack out there. So we get bombarded with the name, who was attacked, what are they going to do, that we could easily forget any of this could happen to us in this virtual room. We are getting so immune to it that we are starting to lose that worried feeling. In the time I've been talking, probably 20 or 30 attacks have gone on around the world. So that's a scary number. The tough thing is it's become very automated, very easy for attackers to facilitate these and try to see who's vulnerable. And so we've all seen those headlines. Twitter, MailChimp, T-Mobile, all those different organizations have been infiltrated and attacked. I don't know if you guys have heard about the national data breach where pretty much everyone in America's social security number was compromised. And unfortunately, a lot of people are becoming immune to it a little bit. And they're saying, oh, yeah, whatever, just another hack, just another headline on the news. I'm just a small company. It'll never happen to me. The unfortunate news is that that's the exact opposite. So these attacks are becoming more prevalent because they're more automated. They're easier for attackers to execute. They don't need the same level of education. They can use AI. Anyone can go out and just buy a toolkit and start attacking people and see what kind of information they can get. In 2021, it was estimated that organizations suffer from ransomware attack every 11 seconds. By 2023, the frequency has intensified significantly. Cybersecurity Ventures now predicts that by 2031, a ransomware attack will occur every 2 seconds globally, impacting both customers and businesses. This stark increase underscores the escalating threat posed by ransomware and the urgent need for robust cybersecurity measures. And we all know that there's a deliberate monetary value associated with a ransomware attack. The ransomware averaging at about $4.5 million in 2022. But what about the intangibles? Like, what does it cost if your reputation is damaged if you're hacked? Like, obviously, Barracuda is a cybersecurity company. We're trying to protect people. If we get hacked, obviously it doesn't look good on us. If you're a target and you get attacked right before the holidays, how many people and you would lose from those sales? Basically, how many people were going to purchase, but then decided, probably not a good idea because I don't want my information stolen. And they're concerned about them becoming involved now that you're sort of a shady individual, or you're no longer stable. So that number is probably a lot bigger because of the intangible dollars that we can't really keep track of. All righty. Kirsten's going to take us through a poll.
Yes, poll alert. So there's a question on the screen. I'm going to launch the poll in just a minute. I'll give you a second to read through it. So do you assess and monitor third-party vendors' cybersecurity postures to ensure they aren't an entry point for attackers? So consider, yourself and your own protections, but also think about some of the vendors that you work with on a regular basis. Do you assess their cybersecurity postures in addition to your own? So is it yes, you do, no, you don't, maybe you're not sure. And maybe, either way, you just like some help to check that out and maybe assess those vendors a little bit further and create some sort of plan and guidelines around that for your organization. So I'll give everyone not a couple minutes, about 1 minute to fill out that poll, and then we'll stop. And again, if you respond, we'll enter you into a raffle to win some swag. So why not? It's fun to participate and you get some free stuff. So why not?
I can't vote, so I can't get any swag.
Sorry about that. Okay, we'll give it about 5 more seconds and then I'm going to end the poll and then I'll share out sort of the full view. Of course, everything's anonymous from everybody, but you can see at least what people said. So we got some yeses, some nos, some I'm not sure's, and a few, I'd like some help. So it's kind of pretty even across the board in a lot of ways. I'm actually very surprised on the yeses. That's a very advanced thing to be doing, and it's something we're seeing more and more now. And highly recommend that everyone take a look at their vendors and cybersecurity postures. So thanks so much. We'll hand it back over to you, Kevin.
Sweet. All right. So this next one, we're going to talk about the evolution of ransomware a little bit. But before we do that, let's define it. Ransomware, a type of malware that infects systems, encrypts data, and demands payment, often in untraceable Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, to restore access. Attackers need deep industry knowledge to target specific companies, but now ransomware has become automated. So they can lock up any business data without understanding its operations, making it a widespread threat. Larger companies with dedicated security teams are better equipped to defend against these evolving attacks, which now bypass firewalls in hours rather than weeks. However, smaller businesses are easier targets, facing significant risk unless they constantly update defenses and use technology that monitors and blocks malicious behavior. So we're using good AI to combat the bad AI. We're using good technology to combat the bad technology. And as attackers continue to collect, these black hat types of programs, we have to continue to advance our software to combat that. And it becomes more readily available as they share it as well. So ransomware is obviously a big one in the headlines because the immediate financial impact it can have on a company. But we can talk a little bit more about some of the other threats and trends that we're seeing as far as cyber attacks go. So this slide shows our security insights. It's a tool that Barracuda uses to track different types of attacks that we are seeing around the world. And you can see here, email is by far the most prevalent type of attack that you're going to see around the world everywhere. Likely because email security is easy to create. You can draft up an email. You can ask ChatGPT to write something for you. You can just blast out a bunch of emails from Gmail and just see, how it pans out, as opposed to like hacking and trying to drive some networking attack and brute force and things of that nature. And the reason that email threat benchmarking is so important is it makes cybersecurity start with a initial breach with phishing emails. So these threats use multiple vectors like CEO fraud, infected email attachments, phony website links, and removable media like USB devices to attack organizations like yours on a daily basis. Phishing is the most common form of cybercrime, with an estimated 3.4 billion spam emails sent every day. Yeesh, I can't even wrap my mind around that. Year after year, the number of phishing attacks continues to increase and clearly represents one of the greatest threats to your data security. So first thing we'll talk about is phishing. I'm guessing that most people are familiar with what phishing is, but it's just someone pretending to be someone else, trying to get your personal information or trying to get you to click on a link, in which it could turn into an install that puts malware on your system, like we talked about before, or even get ransomware put on your computer, basically encrypting all your files so that you have to pay something in order to get that information back, and just steal your information, compromise your system, all kinds of things they can do there. Spear phishing is more targeted forms of phishing. It's designed to trick specific individuals or organizations. And unlike standard phishing, there's no obvious payload like a malicious link, making it harder for traditional email security to detect. Attackers will gather information about targets, such as like organizational roles, recent events they've been to craft convincing emails. And for instance, they might impersonate a CFO and reference a recent conference to trick an accounts payable employee. To counter this, businesses need to create advanced threat detection that uses AI to analyze email patterns and user behavior, alongside educating employees to recognize and report suspicious emails, turning from a liability into a security asset. There are a couple different strategies that phishing emails might install malware or ransomware, which will end up costing you immediate funds and get your information back. Or it could be that phishing email is trying to get credentials so someone could maybe very slowly infiltrate the organization. Maybe the first person they get necessarily doesn't touch money, and they're not really someone that they need to compromise. They want to find their way into the company and move their way laterally around. They could also use that as just a point of command and control to launch other attacks. So somebody may not have access to finances, but they do have access to the network. So I get in, now I have access to your internal network. I can sort of spread throughout there. A lot of malicious things that can go on through email that people need to be paying attention now more than ever. I'll talk about a couple of different types of attacks that you should be aware of: brand impersonation, business email compromise, and blackmail, just so we can define them and people can recognize what's going on in these situations. Brand impersonation we'll start with, which is when attackers pose like as companies, and maybe Google, PayPal, something like that, asking for sensitive information under the guise of account verification. And a lot of times they're going to send you something that it doesn't really seem threatening. And it's, oh, could you just type your password in? Oh, sorry, you missed something. Why don't you come check it out? And you're like, I thought I was logged in, and you type in your password and, now they got it, right? So this often damages brand reputation. Customers often blame the company for the phishing attack, right? Small businesses are equally vulnerable to this. And to protect against it, tools like DMARC, which is a sender authentication method, ensure only verified senders can use your domain for emails. Without this, customers might think your business was hacked. And even if it wasn't, it leads to a tarnished reputation. It's crucial to protect both incoming and outgoing emails to maintain trust and security. Because whether something comes in and compromises one of your users, or they give up some information, or they pay some wire transfer, you could also have somebody compromised and they're sending messages outbound. And now people that you're talking to, or that they're talking to, also become compromised, or get roped into that attack. Business email compromise is the next one. This occurs when attackers gain access to a business's email account or create a nearly identical one to impersonate the owner and defraud the company. This type of spear phishing attack often bypasses detection since it appears to come from within the organization. Attackers may gather company info through methods like phone scams and then compromise a legitimate account. Once inside, they can send emails that aren't flagged by filters. So to prevent this, businesses should monitor for unusual activities such as mass emails, login attempts from unsuspected locations, unexpected locations, I should say, and act quickly to secure compromised accounts before significant damage occurs. Because they're going to continue to do more. They're going to get information the longer they're in there, just really causes trouble. Finally, blackmail is on the rise. This is where attackers claim to have compromising information like browser history, and they threaten to expose it unless they're paid. So you better do this, or else you're going to have your life ruined because I've been using your camera to videotape you doing things, and better send me all this Bitcoin or else, right? They often don't really have any data, but the fear of embarrassment makes people pay. And these attacks go unreported because they're like, I don't want to tell my boss that I got hacked, and I better just pay this up, and this goes away, right? The technologies that detect blackmail attempt to do that through language patterns, like if we're looking for requests of payment through cryptocurrencies and things like that. We also use ways to help prevent them from reaching the inboxes altogether. So in some cases, attackers may escalate demands. You better do this. You better do this. It gets worse and worse, asking for credentials to compromise their network. And working with managed service providers helps stay ahead of evolving threats like this. So including, the risk of extortion becoming ongoing, protectionware, as it's called, staying updated and vigilant is the key. Well, let's take a look at how one ransomware attack can really turn a business upside down. There's not only the fear of losing data, but also the downtime for your employees, which means loss of productivity for you and your team. Then there's the time to restore everything, not to mention any reputational harm that may be derived from the attack while the business was down. For example, in April 2017, the Erie County Medical Center was hit by ransomware. During a Sunday 2 a.m. shift, emergency room workers started seeing ransomware notes announcing the hospital's files had been encrypted. An hour and a half later, the medical center's IT team made the decision to shut all computer systems down, pull the plug, cut the cord. And from that point forward, ECMC would be forced to meet all the demands of a major hospital by relying on low-tech manual processes. So they had to unplug and do things, in a manual way. And those manual processes would end up lasting 6 weeks. How'd this happen? Well, sadly, pretty easily, due to a remote desktop protocol and port 3389 being open. Everyone knows that port. The hackers were able to brute force their way via an easy default password. Somebody probably had password as their password. We've all done it. Don't be shy. They got into the system weeks before, explored the network, and manually deployed SamSam ransomware. Not only did ECMC lose time, but the speed to run their hospital up to today's code. Oh, and they lost $10 million. $5 million had to be spent on the hardware, software, and assistance needed in the response, aka pay someone like you to help them recover what they can. The other $5 million is simply for business losses and increased expenses needed to pay for the employees over time. So yes, this is all important, and we should all be well aware of the effects of a ransomware attack. But in all honesty, what does this really mean for you and your business? It means additional cost to you, the MSPs, or end customers. Why though? Because now your teams are focused on one client losing productivity to other clients or in-house projects, as well as trying to resort to any and all data they can. Hopefully your backup solution has been running not only files and images, but with email as well. Now your team is fully focused on getting clients back up and running, and MSPs are left, taking care of reputation. If you're fully covered with your firewalls, email security, and backup, and no harm is done, and you guys are heroes. But if you're missing anything, your reputation could be damaged as well. A ransomware attack can cripple a business, causing significant data loss, employee downtime, reputational harm, and in recent years, ransomware attacks have skyrocketed. According to a 2023 report, the US alone faced 43% of global ransomware attacks, with groups like Lockbit and Cloak, and exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities, they amplified their impacts. In 66% of organizations that were hit by ransomware attacks over the past year, this made it a growing threat across all industries. If you take the 2017 Erie County Medical Center attack, where an open remote desktop port allowed hackers to deploy ransomware, leading to 6 weeks of manual operations and $10 million in losses, today's companies face even greater risks, with some ransomware evolving into more aggressive forms like double extortion. For businesses, this highlights the importance of working closely with a managed service provider, your MSP, to ensure robust cybersecurity measures such as firewalls, email security, reliable backups, and some of these to prevent some of these catastrophic events. Over to Kirsten.
Okay, actually, we have a question in the Q&A before we get into the poll. I think it's very relevant. I mean, as we shift over from talking about the landscape and all the threats that we're seeing, and then heading into, what you guys can do to protect yourselves. So if I'm on my phone, am I risking by checking email or social media if I am not on verified Wi-Fi? So if I'm on my phone.
The social media aspect of it, checking social media, I mean, if you're not on a verified Wi-Fi, yes, I mean, that's huge. There's a program called Kali Linux, which is used for folks to test their organization's resistance on these types of things. So it is basically like a bunch of free tools that even hackers have used to go in and attack and do things. And one of the tools that's in there is literally a free Wi-Fi that you can open up, and so then you create this Wi-Fi, and anybody that connects to it, it just captures all the passwords that you happen to type in. So the free Wi-Fi that you're using could be like a honeypot, as it's called, or just basically like a lure to try to get you to go through it. But even if it wasn't, entirely baited, I guess, somebody that is looking over that Wi-Fi has access to the network of everybody else that's in there, and can start to go in and get your information through that, right? So unverified Wi-Fi's without a password, those types of things can be very dangerous. And certainly all your information is compromised, or could be compromised, I should say, using an unprotected Wi-Fi. So yes, everything you do over unprotected Wi-Fi is visible.
Yeah, so just imagine whatever you can see, someone else can see. So would you want to share that?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's like talking on the phone and anybody can pick up the other line and listen in, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, like the old days, remember,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Listening to your
get off the phone. I want to call my girlfriend.
Exactly. Okay, so we're going to launch this poll. How confident are you in your organization's ability to recover from a ransomware attack without paying the ransom? So I'm going to launch that on the screen. Let us know. Are you extremely confident? Are you just confident, somewhat confident, not confident, or maybe are you not sure? Because that's a fine answer as well. So we're seeing them roll in. This is your second opportunity to win some Barracuda swag. I have seen one person get it twice. So who knows? You could be extra lucky. So how confident are you? Looks like we're getting a mix. I'll give it another 25 seconds for others to respond. We're at 65% participation. Would love to see that jump up a little bit. Don't be shy. Again, these are anonymous. So, when I share it out, it's just general responses. Give it about 5 seconds. Okay. So I'm going to end the poll and I'll share the results. So we've got few extremely confident, which is impressive, confident, somewhat confident, which is what we've seen, across the board in a lot of cases. A couple not confident, also very common, and I'm not sure is the same. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Okay, over to you, Kevin.
Thank you. I appreciate the participation. So ransomware, obviously a big one in the headlines because of the immediate financial impact it can have on a company, but we can talk a little bit more about some of the other threats that we're seeing in trends as far as attacks go. So today's malware is very different than what we saw a few years ago. There's like a general perception in the market among organizations where they think that the tools they have invested in or that they purchased should work and continue to work well in the future. But let's think about the idea for a second and compare that to our everyday work lives. Back in the day, most everyone had a physical office where they would go for the duration of their workday, and that was it. Today, you can go from virtually anywhere, including your living room, a coffee shop, or even an airport. Traditionally, working in an office in one location meant that a firewall could protect your systems. Everybody in, everybody out goes through the firewall. However, these new working locations mean that no security is around to protect you. So while your firewall is doing a great job in the office, a firewall is completely useless when you're using a VPN as a remote user. Furthermore, some organizations spend a substantial amount of money on the most modern technology for their firewalls, and yet they're still seeing an increase in malware. Malware's whole job today is to be able to bypass those firewalls undetected. It's a cat and mouse game. They're trying to get through, we're trying to stop them. In order to have a successful firewall, you need to have a highly intelligent system on the back end of things. It needs to stay up to date with threat intelligence and scan those items before they get to the firewall to make sure they are in fact clean. As per Microsoft, there are over 300 million fraudulent sign-in attempts to their cloud services every day. One thing you should do is enable multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication when possible. This provides an additional layer of security above and beyond just regular usernames and passwords, such as like an authentication code, something that you get a text, something that you got to go in through an app, thumbprint, retinal scan. By enabling this feature, it makes it more difficult, that's the key word, just more difficult for cyber criminals to gain access to sensitive information. Another important thing you can do is educate users about spear phishing attacks. They are the last line of defense before your actual assets. And this makes it a part of the cybersecurity awareness training, as it's called. Ensuring that your employees can recognize these attacks, understand their fraudulent nature, and know how to report on them makes it a lot more tricky for an attacker that even gets through all those security measures to get any kind of financial or any kind of intellectual gain. Because if your employees are the last thing before they actually can get to those, then they know what to look for and they know what's dangerous. They can stop, and think twice or delete the email and move on with life. This helps employees basically avoid making costly mistakes when you create these guidelines, put procedures in place, and confirm requests that come in through email, including making wire transfers, buying gift cards, and all those types of things. Domain spoofing is one of the most common techniques used in impersonation attacks. DMARC is a technical standard that helps protect email senders and recipients from spam, spoofing, and phishing. DMARC uses other tools to identify if someone is impersonating an email from your domain that could damage your business's reputation. And those would be things like SPF and DKIM and all these types of ways that we can do sender authentication, as it's called, just ensuring that the sender is allowed to use your domain or use the conversation. With this here, we have a couple of different examples of basic hybrid cybersecurity hygiene. First, you want to establish what you want to protect. Build concentric rings of security. That means one solution is not enough. You need to be protecting things with email security. If it gets through email security, which no one would ever claim they're 100% perfect, then you need to be able to catch them, with some end user training. If it gets through the end user training, well, you got backups of all your stuff. So even if it gets crypto locked and encrypted and you can't access it, or if they delete all your data or take it, you have backups. You have second copies of everything that you can bring it back in. Step 3, monitoring your environment. It's essentially going to be just keeping an eye on things. As you start to scale, as you start to get more online, more services, more activity, more users, things get more noisy. So it's really difficult as you start to scale to monitor your environment. There are tools out there like XDR that allow us to keep those types of things in check and help us with that scale. Number 4, reducing response time. So this is having procedures in place. This is something like, creating workflows and having people ready to go to be able to act when somebody gains access to a mailbox, God forbid, to do something, to find out about it, to get in there and stop them immediately. Because every second an attacker's in there, they could be reading emails, they could be sending emails, they could be launching something, or just finding out or getting access to things we don't want them to. And number 5, secure your people, processes, and technology. Over to Kirsten.
Okay, and this is the last opportunity to win some swag, the last poll of the day. I'm going to launch it on the screen in just a second, but how often do you conduct vulnerability assessments or penetration tests to stay ahead of emerging threats? If you don't know what they are, then it's likely that those aren't happening. So, just consider your organization and, whether you're just assessing your overall cybersecurity on a regular basis. Okay, looks like we're getting some answers rolling in. Is it yearly? Is it quarterly, monthly, weekly? Only once or twice before, or never? And then there's also, I'm not sure, sorry, to scroll down. There's lots of different options here. So we're going to see a good mix.
Marilyn's asked a few more questions here just to clarify some of the things
Great.
she's saying. Logging in to social media through LTE, a little bit of a different story. Your 4G, your phone's connection is encrypted. So that is something that is a little bit more protected than if you go to like a coffee shop and connect through like a regular Wi-Fi. So connecting through 4G and things of that nature is a little bit, or not a little bit, much less dangerous than walking into a coffee shop or an airport and connecting to an open Wi-Fi. If we log into our work computers via remote desktop from our laptop at home, are we protected by the work firewall? Well, your computer that you're accessing is protected. So the actions that you make on that computer are protected, but you are coming from your home and tunneling through to your work computer. So that activity up until the moment that it gets to your computer could be, unprotected, right?
Okay, thanks so much. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results for everyone to see. All right. And then Kevin, back over to you.
Awesome. Yeah, we're doing pretty good on time, so that's good. All right, well, here's a quote for you, but we aren't the only ones that are pushing multi-layered strategy. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commissioner states, this is the most successful strategy to adopt. Adding layers, right? That's the name of the game. So what do we do? What do all of these stats mean for you? It's getting worse, basically. This is what a multi-layered approach looks like. As you can see here, we have multiple security layers that not only cover the human errors, which is the most common, but also email, application, and network securities as well. And to make sure everything is covered, don't forget you have to keep the backup and disaster layer running at full throttle, as well as don't forget the crucial step, monitoring. That's what the big triangle is there. And this will help you see suspicious activity, lateral movement behind your systems, and all that noise that we were talking about earlier that is really hard to keep up with. And oftentimes you're just looking through empty space with nothing, a needle in a haystack. All these types of things, help stop attackers before they wreak havoc on your system. Talking a little bit more about monitoring your environment, consider Barracuda XDR. This is like security cameras around your office, building an alert with a team of experts to check it out and remediate the situation should a robber be casing the joint or worse, trying to break in, whatever. XDR is backed by a 24/7 by 365 Security Operations Center, or SOC, as you guys might have heard of highly certified cybersecurity analysts. Their hands are on keyboards, leveraging a number of technologies, including generative AI, monitoring your environments for suspicious activity, and alerting your BMB solutions so that we can stop bad actors before they access your crown jewels, all your assets, your people, your processes, your brand. Furthermore, it has automation to act in the moment with high confidence network intrusions. So for our network security SKU, we can actually block IP addresses that are trying to come through that we have high confidence are undesirable. So that's a really cool thing, acting much faster than a human. Somebody could be scanning, doing a brute force attack to find an SSH port is open on your firewall, and then all of a sudden they try to log in through that SSH port, and we have recognized that they're dangerous, so we shut them down. We also offer active threat hunting on endpoint security with our managed SentinelOne offering. So endpoint is something that everyone has. It's antivirus essentially. With SentinelOne, Barracuda is able to fully manage that solution. And we have a number of benefits that come with that. But one of the main ones is active threat hunting, which represents finding out about new attacks that we use our team, our SOC team, to be able to identify, and then going through with your endpoint and kind of looking to see if those types of attacks are appearing in your environment. We also provide threat insights of active, newly discovered threats in the cybersecurity space. And that's something you can actually sign up for. So you could basically find out about what's happening out there. CrowdStrike was on there. I'm sure many of you have heard about that. A lot of the different actions that have been happening and those vulnerabilities that have been found on these different devices are there as well. And it does integrate with existing solutions. So this XDR platform that Barracuda offers is what we call an open XDR. So we don't force you to use Barracuda products to be able to integrate. It's really just going to be leveraging the information, the logs, and all the activity that are already taking place on solutions that you have, like firewalls you may already have, endpoint that you may already have. It doesn't have to be SentinelOne. You could have, many other different versions of products that we're able to work with.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much. We really appreciate all the time. Just some next steps before we get into Q&A. Again, if you have any more questions, thanks for all the questions that have been asked so far. Just plug them in the Q&A box and we'll get to them in just a sec. First step, talk to your managed service provider, your IT company that invited you here today, about how you can ensure your cyber hygiene is ample across your digital environment. So definitely reach out direct. They'll be reaching out to you after this as well to share with you some information, free resource, and also offer you, which is our next step, a free email threat scan of your Microsoft 365 inboxes. So you can understand what email-borne threats are sitting in there, just waiting for an employee to be clicked on. It's super valuable. It's very C-suite friendly. So, take advantage of this offer. It doesn't take long. And, actually only about 5 or so minutes to scan the environment. So reach out if you'd like one right away. And either way, your managed service provider will be reaching out to you to provide you with this offer and a free resource. So thanks again. And so we'll get into the Q&A. It looks like we do have a question. So with ransomware, do they still require Bitcoin to pay?
I can speak to that. So Bitcoin is the most common cryptocurrency. In my spare time, I am very much into cryptocurrency and those types of things. So I am very well versed in that type of payment. Bitcoin is the most common one. The good thing about Bitcoin is it's untraceable. So that's where a lot of attackers tend to use Bitcoin. I would say it's probably still the most common thing that we see is requests of payments through Bitcoin. One of the benefits that we found is typically attackers will get a big chunk of Bitcoin. They will spread it out across multiple wallets, as they're called, which are free to make, and then sort of send it all around, get it all mixed up, and then kind of converge somewhere else. Technology of government practices has actually made the ability to be able to track those transactions. So a big chunk of Bitcoin gets paid out in a ransomware attack. A government agency can go and watch that and follow all those transactions and just basically see where it lands and go after the person that sort of finally withdraws that from the ending account. So Bitcoin is definitely the number one thing that people still use, but there are other methods that folks have started to try to lean towards because Bitcoin, although it's untraceable in its essence, it is becoming easier for the government to start to follow those. Although those types of technologies to track those activities and the transactions are very expensive. So really, unless you're like the national pipeline of America that got hacked, or, if you're some random small business that the government doesn't associate with, they're probably not going to leverage their cool stuff to be able to track that. So The technology is sort of catching up to attackers. So, of course, attackers are trying to pivot and use different ways to require you to pay. So I would say it's still probably the most common.
Great.
Eber. Is
Yeah, a couple
Barracuda,
more questions. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Is Barracuda XDR an all-encompassing option versus an advanced email security and phishing impersonation security? So Barracuda XDR is really a monitoring service. It is not a service that is going to be offering solutions like antivirus, email filtering, backup, and things like that. XDR integrates with those existing solutions, and as you start to scale, or as a company has a lot of noise, like lots of people logging in and out of your firewall, normally you would have to hire somebody to look at that firewall and watch those logs going by and say, oh yeah, here's the needle in the haystack. And that may not happen, right? You could hire that person. They could sit there reading logs all day, falling asleep, who knows what, but they would really eventually find something, right? Hopefully, but that's really where XDR comes into play, right? It's taking all the noise of what's happening on your antivirus, what's happening in Office 365 and Google, and what's happening on your network, what's happening on your server, and it's compiling those into alerts, which are basically things that should be of concern. And a fully educated SOC team, which is just a bunch of really smart people, are looking through those alerts to say, okay, the events that turn into alerts, of these alerts, these alarms are things that we actually care about. So that's multiple levels of combing through a bunch of noise to find, aha, this is something that's dangerous. We got to tell you about it. So XDR really is more of a monitoring service. There is a little bit of automation that's being added in. So we talked about it earlier, where networking now, automation can be able to say, this is a dangerous IP address, lock it out right then and there. So it is actively actually doing something as opposed to just alerting. And with cloud security, there's going to be functionality very soon that if like somebody logs in and deletes all your SharePoint files, or they start elevating or de-escalating your permissions, like removing your admin access to everyone except for them, those types of things, that would lock out an account. So some cool automation coming in, but the email security filtering, the backup, the firewalls, all that stuff is still separate. XDR is just listening to those to tell you what to look at. Hopefully that answers your question. Aubrey Eichner, the free O365 scan is a great offering. How may I take advantage of the offer? I think we're going to send them a link.
Yes. So actually, your managed service provider who invited you here today, they're going to be reaching out directly, and we'll set up some time with you to go and run that scan really quick and provide that to you. You can run it basically across your entire organization's Microsoft 365 inboxes. And so you'll be able to scan everybody at the same time and get a nice bundled report within minutes. So stay tuned. You'll be hearing from your IT provider soon. But I think that's all the questions that we have today. Thank you so much for all the engagement and participation. Those who won swag, we will be reaching out to you directly and looking for some shipping info so that we can ship that over to you. But again, truly appreciate all the participation and time today. Kevin, any last words?
No, thank you everyone for your questions and your attention. Appreciate you guys coming on here, on a busy day, I'm sure. So appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. Hopefully you got something out of the call here today. Hopefully you learned something, and you're interested to kind of find out more and stay vigilant out there. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much. Have a good one.